Okay, in chapter 43, this is about the immune system, and we went over this for a couple of days in class, and the main idea is that the human body's got a variety of ways in which it can resist the continuous bombardment of these pathogens, or these things that can make us ill. Okay? So let's watch this movie real quick. Okay, so that was a movie that we will watch, or that we have watched in class, I should say. And some of the cells that you saw in there, the immune cells, we have talked about, and some of them we will talk about in the next portion of this discussion, part 2. So this is part 1 here. So pathogens, we said, these are viruses, bacteria, anything that can enter the body and cause disease and make us ill. And on the surfaces of these pathogens, you've got a variety of different types of surface proteins, and this is what our body is going to recognize as being foreign. This is what our body recognizes as being an antigen, in other words, okay? And these antigens, these are the foreign types of proteins that are going to stimulate the immune response, and they usually stimulate the production of antibodies, which help, in the removal of these things by tagging them for removal and so forth, okay? So your body has a variety of ways in which it protects itself from invasion. You've got the skin, you've got the mucous membranes, you've got the ciliated lining of your trachea, and then you've got a variety of internal cellular and chemical defenses that kind of work together along with these phagocytes in order to get rid of the things that are potentially making you ill or are in fact making you ill. Okay, so there's two main types of defense. You've got innate immunity and you've got acquired immunity. With innate immunity, this is the type of immunity that you have before any exposure to the pathogen. So it's usually something that you're born with, and then the innate responses are going to help slow the the spread of whatever it is that's making you ill, some sort of a bacterial infection or something, until your body can build up an acquired response and get rid of that from a specificity standpoint. Okay, so let's watch this and not worry about the details.
The innate immune system recognizes the presence of pathogens and provides the first line of defense. Dendritic cells, which are circulating through the tissues, have the ability to recognize the presence of pathogen-associated molecular patterns, or PAMPs.
Which is not important, just the fact that it's an antigen.
Such as the lipopolysaccharides, or LPS, which are components of the cell membranes of all gram-negative bacteria. Dendritic cells have the ability to recognize PAMPs through the expression of a family of toll-like receptors, or TLRs. In the case of LPS, it is recognized by one member of the TLR family, TLR4, which is expressed on the surface of the dendritic cell. LPS is transported by the soluble LPS binding protein, LBP, to the surface of the dendritic cell and deposited on the cell surface protein CD14. The presence of LPS is detected by TLR4 through its interaction and recognition of the LPS bound to CD14. The signal delivered by the TLR initiates maturation of the dendritic cell. The dendritic cell can now migrate to regional lymph nodes and activate the acquired immune response.
All right, so the details of that are not important, just understanding what's happening there. And you've got a dendritic cell, it's recognizing an antigen, and it's taking it to the lymph system in order to target it for removal. And then those are some of the details that some of you guys asked me about in class, okay? Now with the acquired immunity, this is immunity that's going to develop after you've been exposed to some sort of a pathogen, something that could potentially make you ill. And the acquired immune system is a very, very specific type of a thing, so that it's not always operating at high speed. If you're infected with something else, it will go after that specifically, and it won't fire up the entire immune system. Okay, and it has to have the ability to distinguish between things that are closely related to one another in terms of what they're made up of, and certain types of cells that you have in your body that are displaying certain surface proteins. It's got to be able to recognize self versus non-self as well. And the specificity that the acquired immune system achieves is due to the lymphocytes, these B cells that are going to be making the specific antibodies to the thing that's making you sick at that particular time. Okay, so your skin now, back to some of these innate types of responses, or innate forms of the immune system. You've got the skin, and we talked about the sweats, the oils, the different types of things that are designed to help make it inhospitable to bacteria. And of course, it's not completely, your hands have bacteria all over them, and we talked about that. But your skin has a normal pH of 3 to 5. And this prevents the colonization of the bacteria that are all over your body, all over the skin. And the secretions from the skin, they contain enzymes. So there's this constant battle going on designed to kind of keep you, healthy, to keep these bacteria from being able to get into your body. And that lysozyme, that enzyme that's going to break down the cell walls of many bacteria, again, just that constant battle that's going on. Your tears, we talked about those. Those contain some enzymes. Those are constantly washing out the dust and bacteria and things that you can get in your eyes. Your mucus, that's trapping the bacteria, the dust, the things that you're breathing in, your saliva, and other types of secretions from your body. These things are all working to prevent and slow the spread of these pathogens. Now, we talked about the mucus. Of course, that's trapping a lot of these things that you're breathing in, the dust and so forth, and any bacteria or viruses that may be riding on it. And then you've got the cilia, which you find in your trachea that we said are helping to kind of work and sweep the bacteria that's trapped in the mucus out. And you can either spit it out, you can swallow it, and the low pH of the stomach's going to help get rid of it, and that sort of thing. And of course, none of it's fail-safe. In other words, we get sick from time to time. But these are the things that really keep us from getting sick on a daily basis and potentially dying from these things. Okay. Now, your internal defenses, you have some phagocytes. These are some white blood cells that produce antimicrobial types of proteins. They initiate inflammation, and they engulf and trap microbes to try to help limit their spread throughout the body. And this is key to the non-specific type of innate defenses, but it also plays a role in the acquired immune system, as we'll see. Okay?
The uptake of bacteria by phagocytes is an active process which requires the triggering of specific receptors on the phagocyte. Fc receptors, which bind antibody-coated bacteria, are one of the receptors capable of triggering phagocytosis. Binding of the aggregated antibody molecules to Fc receptors on the phagocyte causes the cell to engulf the bacterium. The phagocyte first produces pseudopods, or ruffles, that surround the bacterium and then fuse, trapping the bacterium within what is now an intracellular vesicle, the phagosome. Within the phagocyte, lysosomes fuse with the phagosome, delivering their enzymatic contents to degrade the engulfed bacterium.
Okay, so phagocytes work that way, and they also work by just recognizing the surface proteins and bringing them in, those that are not yet bound with antibodies. So that one is when they are bound with antibodies, and we'll talk about how that process happens, but it also recognizes them being foreign and brings them in as well. Okay. Now the phagocytes, these are binding to the surfaces of these invading types of cells. As you saw, they use the surface receptors to recognize the proteins on these microorganisms, realizing that they're not the normal body cells. They then engulf them, bring them in, bind them with a lysosome, which is a bag of enzymes, break it down, and then either get rid of the contents, or they display some of the proteins on the surface, which we haven't discussed yet, but that's one of the keys to the acquired immune system. Okay, so let's look here.
Neutrophils are white blood cells that hunt and kill bacteria. In this spread, a neutrophil is seen in the midst of red blood cells. Staphylococcus aureus bacteria have been added. The small clump of bacteria release a chemoattractant that is sensed by the neutrophil. The neutrophil becomes polarized and starts chasing the bacteria. The bacteria, bounced around by thermal energy, move in a random path, seeming to avoid their predator. Eventually, the neutrophil catches up with the bacteria. and engulfs them by phagocytosis.
So there's an example of how phagocytosis works to get rid of the invader. In this case, it's a particular type of bacterium. Okay, so it's just kind of an interesting little movie to watch to see how that actually happens. So lysosomes, we said that these are essentially bags of enzymes, but they work by poisoning whatever it is that has come into the body. And they use toxic forms of oxygen like nitric oxide that are made in the lysosome. They also have enzymes, as we said, and they're working to degrade, break down, digest these invaders into their kind of constituent parts, the proteins and such, that the body can then use to recognize other foreign invaders and get rid of it as a part of the acquired immune system. So the innate and the acquired are different, in that the innate is something you're born with, the acquired is something you pick up along the way, but they both are really involved in working together to kind of get rid of these pathogens that are getting into your body. Okay, so we're going to leave off here, and then we'll pick up here in part 2 in just a second.